Welcome to Time Travelling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. In today's special Rambling on the TARDIS, we take a look back at Dodo. We will be talking about her strengths, her weaknesses, and picking out her best and worst episodes.
We would also love to hear your thoughts on Dodo. To join in on the discussion, you can check us out at TimeTeamp, that's TimeTeamp, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravellingteam@teamproductions.com. So, Dodo.
Dodo, gone the way of the dodo.
I was wondering how long it would take one of us to make that joke.
It was unintentionally timed that you were drinking as I said that. So, so Dodo Chaplet. I would venture so far as to say we hardly knew ye.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Yeah, so like as many of you, as our regular listeners are aware, and for our newer listeners, we break down the companions that after they leave the show, and we discuss their high points, their low points, and their strengths and their weaknesses, and what makes them hot. So with Dodo, I don't know about you, Trish, but I honestly found it kind of hard to find a best and a worst episodes, because what I would consider Dodo to be is a very moment-based companion.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I was able to identify worst episodes. I think that's easier.
Yeah.
Best episodes, however, I had moments or maybe an entire episode out of a story, but not the story as a whole, that type of thing.
Yeah. She wasn't because the way that she was written and the way that she was developed, she never got a chance to carry a huge section of a story or a story by herself.
Yeah. So it's quite difficult, like particularly when you compare her to someone like Vicky or Susan or Barbara.
Yeah.
She didn't have the same dedication to her character that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be quite interesting. But what we can do to stay on form is the strengths and weaknesses. I think that, we very much can do. So
yeah.
Start with the positive. We have her strengths. So, by what did you have as Dodo's strengths?
So, first and foremost, she's a bit of a spitfire in the sense of when Stephen comes in. We're talking about Stephen. Stephen comes in and he starts kind of it's like that thing, lock eyes, establish dominance type thing, where he comes back onto the TARDIS and she's like not having any of it. And then she's forced out the door the minute they land on the Ark, after raiding the Doctor's wardrobe. So, I think she's meant to be like a bit of a cockney lass, and there's no fear in her. Also, as we see in the Savages, like when her back's to the wall, she's not afraid to pick up a piece of equipment and just start swinging around. Also, I think one strength that she has is her empathy, which we get to see at various points. Now, sometimes it's for sometimes it leads to good things, other times it leads to bad things. So her empathy, I think it is a dual-sided thing, like Stephen's kind of impulsiveness, that it is kind of, there will be moments where it does lend itself to being a weakness as well. But that being said, having empathy is always a good thing to see in a Doctor Who companion. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. And as I said, just that great sense of adventure where it's wherever they land, there never seems to be a complaint out of her. Yeah.
So I agree on all of those. Mine that I have down, for me, the one that stands out the most is her empathy. She's very empathetic in a way that comes across as incredibly genuine, and in a way that is consistent throughout. So we mentioned last time that Stephen cared a lot about people he cared about. Yeah. But if he didn't have a connection to you, he didn't give a shit. Yeah. Whereas Dodo shows empathy for pretty much everybody, which is great. It comes across as incredibly genuine, and it's consistent throughout the entire run. In the Ark, obviously she was incredibly upset at the idea that she may have inadvertently infected all of these people with a virus that could kill them. And there was no sort of, how to put it, what do you mean they don't have a cure for the common cold? What do you mean that it was all just, I can't believe I did this. It's my fault.
Mm.
She can be quite fearless, which is good. I say can because she isn't always, but then again, no one should ever always be fearless. There should always be some level of fear, I think, to keep you from doing something stupid. But like, you know, the way that it's kind of weird because like we've described how Stephen, and in some ways the Doctor, didn't treat her very well.
Yeah.
The Doctor regularly treated her like a child, even though she's not a child. And Stephen, we've already said, treated her like shit most of the time.
Mm.
But it's not that she spoke back to them, with the exception of that one moment with Stephen. It's not that she gets all sort of like, you know, what's it to you with the Doctor and Stephen all the time. But you can tell by looking at her, there are moments where she just fucking rolls her eyes at them and it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like she's not confrontational.
No.
About it. She just lets it roll off her back, which is good. And the last thing I have about her is she can be very observant and insightful. I think it probably comes to the fore the most in The Savages.
Yeah.
When she realizes there's something weird about where they are.
Yeah.
And she won't let it go. And she picks up in that thread and she follows through with it.
Yeah. So
I think that's something that they didn't go into as much as they probably should have, was that she's very observant.
Like, if this society is so perfect, why do you need armed guards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know? And like, she questions things that the Doctor probably would question. But unfortunately, she and the Doctor didn't have that many scenes together, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But Stephen wasn't questioning them.
No.
Do you know?
The Doctor was off schmoozing.
Yeah. So that, I think that's it for Dodo. You know, she's very empathetic, fearless. She took to the wonders of space and time very easily.
Oh, did she what?
Like, literally, like, no questions asked, almost. And she's an incredibly observant and insightful person.
Absolutely. I just wish, like, see, my weaknesses now, they are going to sum up for me the whole kind of Dodo experience, and that, like, we talked about her being a bit of a spitfire, but the thing is, it's just a small bit, because for a lot of the stories, she just lets Stephen, like, walk all over her, and it's like, hang on a sec there now, you don't know me.
Yeah.
And she never takes him to task on it the same way that Vicky would have, or Susan would have, or Barbara would have. And it almost feels like Dodo was written to feel a quota, as opposed to be a new addition to the long thread of strong female characters in. Because, like, I know that, like we've said, that Susan had her bad moments, but when her good moments were there, they were really good. So
yeah, but she also had a good dynamic with everyone in the TARDIS, which I don't think Dodo did.
No. And so, like, I think that, as I said, that Dodo was written just to fill the female quota, as opposed to being an actual proper addition to the long line of strong female characters in the show so far, which is a shame, because that's not the kind of legacy you'd want to have for your character.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like they said, well, we need to have a girl.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I wonder how much of that was down in terms of the character, and we'll get on to her weaknesses in detail because I have a few others. But, like, I wonder how much of that is down to the fact that when she was hired to be this, like, cockney, maybe a bit brash person, but the producers said no. You know, BBC English. You know, maybe, you know, give him some credit. Maybe what John Wilds had planned for the character, he didn't get to do.
Possibly, yeah.
Because the BBC said no. You know, maybe the whole idea of her, you know, being this sort of cockney spitfire didn't really work when she was just another girl in the TARDIS. Do you know? Yeah. Maybe if we give John a little bit of credit, which I don't usually do.
I think that might have been. I think they must have changed their attitude towards, you know, BBC English, because the person that one of the people that replaces her, Ben, I wouldn't consider his diction to be BBC English. No,
but, like, there's a difference in time here and stuff like that. You know?
I also made reference earlier on to like her empathy being a bit of a double-sided coin or double-sided sword. Is that sometimes her empathy gets a bit too much, as we see, like, and I think a prime example of that is the toy maker, because yes, she's very empathetic towards the plight of their like opponents, because they're just as trapped as, well, some of them are just as trapped as she is. But I think that for me, no, this is just my own type of thing. It's that it's a case of once bitten, twice shy. After seeing that there's going to be no cooperation between the two sides, I would be very wary of wearing my heart on my sleeve for the rest of that adventure. But that's just me.
Yeah, you and I disagree on her empathy in that one. So
yeah, because I think like a good example of that is like with Cyril, because like, you know that he is cheating, you know that he is out acting the bollocks, and yet you still like, yeah, I know. I think we probably are going to disagree on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my thing with that is, I've known people, and you've known people, who are shitty people.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you should be a shitty person as well, and you can still be kind to them. So maybe that's why it doesn't bother me quite as much.
Yeah, maybe.
In terms of her other weaknesses, I mean, I'm sure we can both agree her primary weaknesses is the fact that she's completely underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's pretty much it. It's because she's so underdeveloped. Is she just seems to be a bit of punching bag is too strong of a phrase, but like she's not like a proper foil to Stephen. Like she's just there, and he like in his mind good naturedly ribs her and berates her and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, no, there's a time where it's just being a dick, and she never seems to push back.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think is missing the most from Dodo.
I think, the Doctor kind of described her very well himself in The Gunfighters, that stupid story, in that she was fast becoming a cliche.
Yeah.
As opposed to being, we've discussed in the past that, people say like, oh, all the classic companions did was scream, and, at least all the classic female companions, all they did was scream and get captured. We proved that wasn't true. With Barbara and Vicky and Susan herself. She screamed a lot, but she also had her great moments.
Yeah.
But even the Doctor says that Dodo was fast becoming a cliche. And it's like, don't call attention to it.
Yeah.
Don't highlight it. The other thing that I think has her down as a weakness for me is going back to her being underdeveloped and underutilized. She rarely, if ever, did anything to actually drive the plot. There's maybe one exception, which would be The Savages, where she drove the plot. But she drove the plot for one episode.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Do you know? She's just sort of there as part of the scenery, I suppose. And, to sort of toss Stephen the ball so he can score. Do you know, that's kind of all that she does, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I would kind of say, like, in terms of being used as a plot point, I think she's also used as a plot point a small bit in the War Machines, but again, that like the thing about the writing for both the Savages and War Machines is that she's used to drive the plot forward a small bit, but she's not integral then to the resolution of said plot.
Yeah, it's like she gets it started, but she has no follow through. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, if we're going with like a basketball analogy, she's going in for the layup and then just passes to Stephen, or in this case, passes to Ben and Polly at the last second, and you're like, no, you can do it. You can do it. You can drive the plot.
So, will we move on to her best and worst?
Yes. So, like we said, I don't really have a best story.
Yeah.
I have bits of stories that I thought she was very good in, and I have 3.
Cool. I have 2 that they're just kind of spring to mind.
Okay. So if we've done what we've done in the past and do her least best to her
best.
best.
Yeah.
So my three are
Mm-hmm.
the Celestial Toymaker,
Mm-hmm.
the Massacre, and the first half of the Savages.
Cool. I'm actually there with you on. So I've got two of those three. I had the Savages and the Celestial Toymaker. I think I might swap them around, but again, because unfortunately, I think it's because she's so underdeveloped in the sense of, and those are only fleeting moments in overall stories. I think just to have them there is probably the best thing. But I would say maybe. No, I think I'll stick with Savages being number 2 and Celestial Toymaker being number 1.
Yeah, so for me, Celestial Toymaker is number 3 because, again, we get some good potential from her. Her empathy, which I really like, shines through. She takes a couple of risks, like sitting in the chair to just, we have to solve it. I'll sit in the chair. And her thing with the sergeant to get him to help them and whatever. All of that is very good. But those are tiny slivers of the story as a whole.
Yeah.
And again, for the most of the story, she's deferring to Stephen.
Yeah.
So that would be my read on the Celestial Toymaker. For the Massacre, I think it's just her whole introduction at the end. I said it at the time. It made me really interested. I really wanted to know who this person would be. Not taking anything from anybody and not really overwhelmed by the fact that this box is humongous when she goes into it. And there was just such great potential there. For me, that small bit at the end told us probably more about this character than all of her episodes. We get her compassion there as well, because the whole reason was that someone got hurt and so she was going for help. And then for the Savages, the first half of the Savages, where we get to see her investigating and her questioning, and then that stops. As soon as Stephen finds out what's happening, it sort of comes to an end. So those were my reading on the 3. So you said you did Savages as second best and Toymaker's best.
Also, I just wanted to bring to attention her a strength that she had. I would have to say is her impeccable fashion sense, because no matter where she landed, with the exception of maybe the Ark, but that was just because, look, it's, a huge wardrobe, she always seemed to be, she never looked like she was out of place. Whereas,
unlike Stephen the Tit in his
gunfighter's
uniform.
Yeah, but no matter where it was, it was just always, she seemed, and I know that might sound like a bit of a stupid strength, but at the same time, if you know where you're going, and you know where you're landing, and you dress to blend into the society, go you. Smart move. So the Savages. I had it as number 2 because we get to see the shades of Barbara, in the sense of this potential threat is coming towards me, but it's he's collapsed. The right thing to do is to look after him, to care for this poor individual. As we said, she's very astute. She, no fool her, there's something, going on here. And as well, the gutsy performance, when the lab techs are trying to corner her, and she just, again, as I said, I'll smash the whole thing if I have to until I get my answers. So that's, we got a bright flare of who Dodo could be as a character. And unfortunately then for the rest of it, is because it's the Stephen's outgoing story, they're trying to focus on that. Now, I know that I rag a bit on her performance in the Celestial Toymaker, but there's a lot, I think. Now, as I said, don't get me wrong, her empathy towards them at the start is very noble, and it's very understandable that she would try and help me, help you, kind of quid pro quo type thing. It's only towards, after repeatedly being shown that they're not in the same mindset as you, that's where I, Paddy, would try and rein it back in. But I think one thing that's really telling of Dodo in that is they have a 50-50 shot at getting out there. And so she decides to sit in the chair. Now, I'd like to believe that in her head she knows that, well, we just need to find the TARDIS to win, essentially. but she's more than willing to risk herself so that Stephen and the Doctor will be safe. And I think that's like, it's a very brave thing to do, because you've seen the damage that some of these chairs can do, and they're not all doing the same thing. So you can't really prepare yourself for what may come. So that leap into the unknown, I think, is a really, really strong moment from Dodo.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Yeah. So, and in relation to the massacre, while it is a good showing for like an incoming character, I wouldn't have put it into this list because it's at the end of someone else's story as such. So I was kind of like trying to more so focus on the ones where she was part of a bigger thing and trying to find the moments there. But I will say like that it is a good kind of intro for a new coming character.
Cool. So then we have her worst episodes.
So I have 2. What are your number 2 and number 1?
So least worst,
Yeah,
is the gunfighters,
right.
and worst is the fucking war machines.
Again, we're switched because I've got the war machines as second worst and the gunfighters as the worst.
Okay, you go first this time.
Okay, so the war machines, as I said earlier on, she serves no purpose other than to drive the plot. And then she's, because of contract reasons behind the scenes, the character of Dodo is removed from the entirety of the story. And as I said, in terms of a character, her letter to the doctor, or no, she shouldn't even write a letter to the Doctor. Her message to the Doctor is pretty much a, thanks
for the lift.
Yeah, thanks for the lift type mentality. And I went like in War Machines, I discussed like that I think a much better ending would have been for her to write a letter to the Doctor and for the Doctor then to react to that, as opposed to him walking away with this poor view of her, because he does walk away a bit angry. Now he probably will reflect later on, but still. But that all comes in silver medal position behind the gunfighters, because she is complete and utter cliche in this story. It's like, I don't like, we've got that kind of weird case of Stockholm syndrome where she's like doing Kate's hair. Like the one shining moment that she may have is where she kind of holds the gun on Doc Holliday, but then the minute she finds out that he had a gun on her, she faints. Like after the fact, not even during it was after the fact, and it just like, it was such a like as I said, as I gave my score, I do not like the gunfighters one bit, with the exception of maybe William Hartnell's comedic acting. That's about it. And yeah, so no, just like, I don't think the gunfighters is a really good representation, other than her impeccable fashion sense.
Yeah. So my take on the gunfighters is I also hate it.
Yeah.
As a story. In relation to Dodo, though, because I said this at the time, she was such a fucking dingus in the way that she acted. Like, she didn't have to go with Doc Holliday and Kate. They weren't fucking forcing her. Like, do you know what I mean? She could have easily left at any time, but she didn't. I think the reason why I have it in the number 2 spot is, again, there were enough glimpses of who she was for the war machines to be worse. So, okay. Like, we have at the beginning, yeah, she gets really excited about being in the Old West and things like that, but, she tries to dress accordingly, maybe a little bit cliched, but she tries to dress accordingly, and she tones it the fuck down compared to Stephen, who goes all the way up to 90, like an idiot. And while I think she's effectively removed from the story for most of it, the thing with her Stockholm Syndrome-esque thing is that at the end, she does save Doc Holliday. Do you know? And I like to think she realised that he's a bad person as like an individual, but he's not a villainous person. Do you know? Like, he's out for his own gain, but he could have easily killed her at any point, and he didn't. And, yeah, it may have been for his own gain that he wanted to go back to Tombstone or whatever, but he could have done anything to her and he didn't. And so she sort of took that and said, okay, Grant, he's not as bad as he maybe could have been. With the War Machines.
Yes.
It was her final story. And literally 5 minutes in, we start to see her get hypnotized. And she drives the plot for maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know, because we also had what was his name?
Botan?
Professor Brent, or whatever his name was?
Yeah, Brett.
Yeah. We also had him being hypnotized. So that was already happening in the story. We see what that does to someone. So the only thing she really contributed was under hypnosis, so it wasn't Dodo trying to hypnotize the doctor. And then being a fucking idiot and not realizing it didn't work. And then she's shipped off to the country. We don't hear anything from her. And like you said, like the whole fact that she just said, like, thanks for the lift at the end of it is just so against the character that we have seen. You know, while she didn't have a lot of scenes with the doctor throughout her entire run, you could tell in the scenes that they did have that she felt a great deal of affection for him. And, you know, again, we see it in the gunfighters when, you know, he's sort of being all belligerent because he has a toothache. And, you know, he's making fun of their clothes. And he's like, that hat won't work with your outfit. And she's like, it's not for me, it's for you.
Okay, I'll swap them around. Like, the
You don't have to.
No, like, no, that you're kind of saying that kind of stuff. Like, the War Machines is probably the worst of the two. Because, like, there is those two moments in Gunfighters, like, where she saves Doc Holliday and she does show genuine concern for the doctor, versus the War Machines, where it's just, no.
Also, she starts out dumb in the War Machines, and I hate when people start out dumb. Why are you putting an out of service sign on the TARDIS? So people like you don't wander in, Dodo. Like, that's exactly the reason why he's doing it.
You know, it's actually kind of interesting. Like, for what we kind of term to be like a non-character, we've actually spoken quite a bit about her. So
I think you and I could speak quite a bit about anything, though.
That's true.
Did you have any overall thoughts on Dodo?
I think Dodo... Okay, I mentioned before that I think Dodo's exit is a shocking indictment of the writers at the time, that they don't know how to handle a mid-contract or like a mid-story contractual ending.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because like some of the writing that we've seen in Doctor Who up until now has been some of the best serialized storytelling, both be it science fiction or drama that I've seen. And that, like, given the choice of, you know, a modern science fiction show versus some Doctor Who stuff, I would probably go back and watch Doctor Who, because of how good the character writing is. So I think Dodo's a representation of not knowing how to write a female character, I think, or a strong female character, because like it's just such a jarring experience after having come through Susan and Barbara and Vicky and Sarah. Katarina unfortunately didn't get enough development to enter into the equation proper. But it's such a jarring experience that it's almost like when a vinyl record skips.
Yeah. And
that's such a shame, because for a character that was brimming with potential, that we only get to see bright, like, you know, couple of flares of it every now and again. It's, again, as I say, it's not the type of legacy you'd want to leave behind.
I think for me, what's really unfortunate is that when you first meet her, she is so different from the companions we've seen before. And it gets you really excited for what this new sort of era of companions is going to be. Yeah. And then there's no follow through. She just does not stand out when you put her next to Stephen.
No.
Who just absorbs attention, good or bad. You can't help but pay attention to him.
Yeah.
And I think what she lacked was something that made her uniquely Dodo. I mean, we just said it earlier on. we see her Barbara shining through. It shouldn't be her Barbara shining through. It should be
her Dodo.
Dodo.
Yeah.
And they took away what made her unique and interesting, which was that she was very brash and, wouldn't put up with people's guff. They took that away from her, so there was nothing that made her unique. And it was like they were trying to do that deliberately in the way that Stephen would describe her. Like, he described her like she was a klutz and she was always getting into trouble. And that at least would have been interesting. But instead, she does nothing. Like, if she was a klutz, that would have been a thing.
Yeah.
But she wasn't.
The thing as well is that Dodo was, like, I think I would consider her to be like a new gateway type companion, because she's from a contemporary time.
Yeah.
And unlike Barbara, she's like the every girl. She's like she seems to come across like a working class girl that a lot of, I suppose, female fans at the time could have really empathized with, because Vicky, she's a teenager, but she's also from the future where things are very, very different. The same way with Susan. They weren't proper teenage girls. Whereas with Dodo, it felt like, no, we can try and bring that sort of thing into it. And we see it, in companions to come. They represent the female role, like, no, I would say a more positive and progressive version of the female character at the time.
Yeah. Well, we already see that with Polly,
Oh, yeah. But
in the War Machines, Polly is very much someone that young women can relate to. She's very much a modern girl and stuff like that. And yeah, I would agree with you that Dodo could have and should have been that.
Yeah, she should have been what Polly is.
Particularly because, like, you mentioned that, like, obviously Vicky's a teenager from space, so while you can relate to her a little bit, it is quite difficult at times, I imagine, for younger audiences to relate to her. Barbara is the only other contemporary female that we see on the show, and she was written and cast to be the mother figure. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that Barbara was done wrong. Barbara was Barbara. She was meant to be motherly. That was the point. And Susan, well, the first episode is called An Unearthly Child. It's she's not meant to be relatable in quite that sense. So yeah, I think they took away everything that would have made her interesting and unique, and we were left with a cliche that is quickly forgotten.
The Dr. Stephen.
My voice just broke it. That wasn't intended.
Join the adventures of the Doctor, Stephen, and female.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an awful shame. It really is. Because you want to give a character like a proper fair shake before you can judge them properly. And like, again, as we all said, like, these ramblings are just our thoughts on these characters. And like some of them we really like, some of them that we're not so big fans of. And unfortunately with Dodo, I think it's kind of hard to say whether I like her or don't like her, because she's just not there enough for me to make an accurate depiction.
I would class Dodo as, she's like a guest character that you really like.
Yeah.
That pops up for a couple of episodes and then buggers off again. Do you know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good comparison. And I really can't think of one.
Reg Barkley.
Or Vedic Barile, or someone that just pops up for a little while. You like them, but they don't get really to know anything much about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really think of anyone else from any other.
The
lawyer guy from Battlestar Galactica. Roman Lampkin. That was it.
Oh, that's Mark Sheppard. Like, Mark Sheppard is just automatically awesome in everything that he ever does.
That's true.
Oh, I love Mark Sheppard. So
we'll get to him eventually.
We will down the line, but I'm pretty sure we'll probably make a lot more analogies to Mark Sheppard as time goes on.
Probably.
And his dad as well. So I think that just about wraps up this rambling for Dodo. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
So as always, guys, we are back to our regularly scheduled programming on Monday, and we will be discussing the first adventure of the brand new crew in The Smugglers.
See you then. Well, speak to you then.
It's great. They can visualize us. They can visualize.